Roll call.
Roll call for Legislative Day number 3, January 12th, 2023. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? French? Here. Furphy? Here. Guru? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Kinsky? Kolb? Present. Landon? Present. Larson? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Kinsky?
Excused.
Excused. President Driscoll?
Here.
30 present, 1 excused.
Thank you. Prayer by Father Tom Conkleton, St. Mary's Cathedral.
Let us pray. At the end of the Gospel of St. Matthew, Jesus said, "Behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." With these words, we are promised that we are never alone and that God is always present with us. Are we therefore aware of God's presence? As we pause, as we begin our work this day, we seek to remind ourselves of the presence of God. With God's presence, we are offered divine grace and assistance in our daily tasks. If things should become difficult or challenging, might we remember that divine presence? Perhaps at midday and then even tonight, we might individually stop and reflect. How am I aware of God's presence? How was I aware of God's presence? So that we might be even more open to God's grace and assistance. Be therefore with us, O Lord, and let us be aware of your presence. We ask this in all things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Senator Schuler, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the reading clerk please read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of January 11, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, report is adopted. Okay, Doctor of the Day, we have none, so you folks all take good care of yourself. We're doctorless. Today in Wyoming history, 1886, 13 killed in the Alma coal mine explosion. Alma was a coal mining camp in Uena County, Wyoming, near the town of Evanston. Second explosion in 5 years. Following the second explosion, the Wyoming Territorial Legislature established the Office of State Mine Inspector, which subsequently shut down the Alma mines in the 1940s after too dangerous to mine there. Pretty big proud deal, folks. State of Wyoming stepped out on mine safety long before the feds even thought about it. Also on this day in 1963, 37 below in Rock Springs. Balmy day. Quote for the day: responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. Pretty potent words. So, introduction, reading, and reference of bills. Senate File 97, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 97, Educational Trust Fund Transfer, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
Senate File 97 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 83, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 83, K-12 School Facility Leasing, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
Senate File 83 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 33, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 33, Defining Aircraft for Purposes of Hunting Prohibition, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee.
Senate File 33 is referred to Committee 5, Agriculture. Senate File 56, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 56, Prohibiting Travel Across Private Land for Hunting Purposes, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee.
Senate File 56 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Senate File 76, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 76, Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act, sponsored by the Blockchain Committee.
Senate File Number 76 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 95, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 95, Moon Landing Day, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
This one's out there. Senate File 95, referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. All right, well, it's appropriate. Reports from standing committees.
Mr. President, January 11, 2023, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 77, Public Works Apprenticeship Programs Repeal, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. President, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
Thank you. Bills on second reading. Do a quick little follow-up with all of you folks on second reading. Bills on second reading generally just kind of run through. If you have any questions from committee of the whole, feel free to get up and comment on them. If you do comment, comments are limited to 2 times, 5-minute time limit on them. And you can discuss the bill whether or not there's amendment. If there's an amendment, it certainly will come up and the amendment will be introduced and done. So that's kind of the process on any of the bills. You can do it. Pretty common if you don't have any comments, second reading just runs through. So Senator Landon.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor?
You may.
Thank you. With your indulgence, Mr. President, we got started yesterday and had a couple of things come up. Would just like to throw out a couple of things, having served the last 12 months on your behalf on a committee that is working hard to finish up the state capitol. Believe it or not, we still have quite a bit of work to do. One of the pieces of work that we have is the acoustical reduction that we had in the renovation of the building. We actually lost some of the ability to hear each other. And so we visited about this last session, and I thought I would bring it up again today, Mr. President. Not all of us have been play-by-play broadcasters on games or anything. The senator in the back corner of the room and I have, and I would just remind everybody that these microphones, get real friendly with them. Get right up to them and pretend like you're Vin Scully and you're doing the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and it's time for baseball. The reason I say that is that up around the upper reaches of the Senate chamber, Mr. President, folks can't hear us very well. And when we're back away from these, it's even worse. So we still have acoustical work. The good news is next week, we will have professionals in the building. The day that we're off, they're going to be scouring this facility, and then they'll be with us that following day to do what they can on the acoustical front. And we're hopeful that that will help everybody to hear better, Mr. President, eventually. In the meantime, stay up there close to your microphone and speak up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Good advice, unless you don't want your wife to hear you at home or your spouse. Talk into the mic because they can't hear you online either unless you're talking into the mic. So with that, we'll go into second reading. Senate File 4, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 4, North American Industry Classification System Amendments.
Senate File 4 having been read 2 separate times. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a point of information from the discussion on Committee of the Whole yesterday. I did confirm after reading 495 pages of the NAICS Code Manual that it is in fact parole offices and probation offices, not officers. So the bill stands correct as presented. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Senate File 4 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 11, second reading of the bill. Senator Dockstader.
I'll wait for it to be read. Go ahead.
What?
I'll wait for it to be read.
Senate File 11, Cancer Early Detection Amendments.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the amendment?
Senate File 11, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 13, before.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 11. Folks, we heard our floor leader loud and clear to make some clarification language. That's what we did on page 2 of adding for the persons who are uninsured. We feel like that clarifies it. You can see the amendment there in front of you. And we're just simply doing what he asked to do, that we're responding to his concerns and clarifying the language. And I would follow up, if I could please, Mr. President, a couple of our questions. A question pertaining to the uninsured versus underinsured. To clarify, the program does cover the uninsured applicants at 100% and for the underinsured applicants for the program covers any remaining balance after the insurance has been paid. We followed up on these questions with the Department of Health. And also there was a question related to the fund that pays for the colonoscopies, and our good former chair from Campbell County from the other side of the building answered that correctly. We budget around $400,000 each to cover the number of these procedures that the program takes care of in a year. So clarified the language, following up on a couple of questions. And folks, personal note, we haven't got this whole thing figured out, this whole disease. We've got people who've survived it here on the floor. We got services for a young grandmother at home this Friday that just because she lost the battle, and I got to go up to Missoula on Sunday for a niece by marriage who lost the battle. We're still getting this figured out, so a little assistance along the way is always good. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I guess I'm concerned that this amendment, as I read it, either does nothing or does something bad. And I'm not sure which of those two it does. And I say that because it's still a little bit unclear to me whether there are underinsured that would be eligible for the amended language and for the program as the bill is drafted, that would then be taken off of eligibility under the circumstances that we passed this amendment. And what the effect of that would be, if that were the case, is that it would actually dissuade individuals for looking for opportunities to have modest insurance that would put them into an underinsured category, but allow them to have some modicum of insurance available. And that might be what happens with the current language. In other words, encouraging individuals to look for their own insurance products, but it might not be sufficient to meet the needs. I don't think we would want to discourage that as a policy, and that would be the effect of saying you either have to be entirely uninsured to be eligible for this program, or if you have any amount of insurance, if you're underinsured, well, now you've eliminated your eligibility. So that's a counter incentive to trying to get folks to provide themselves access to affordable health care with the means that they have available to themselves. So that might be what it does, or it does nothing, as I understand it, if there isn't any circumstance where underinsured would be utilizing this program. So at this point, I guess I'd like more clarification of what the advantage of passing this amendment is, because I can only see a potential disadvantage, and I might just not be understanding it, which is fine too, Mr. President, so I hope to have clarification.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment was simply the good majority floor leader brought up a concern about ambiguity in the way that it was worded to start with yesterday, the way that the bill is worded. And what this amendment does, you notice the same words are in there, we just changed the order. And after speaking with the attorney, the intent was to make sure that both of those would qualify then, either the underinsured, be that whatever insurance that is through the ACA or whatever insurance it is, that they pay the remainder of what's not paid by insurance, and that also the uninsured pay the full 100%. And that's the intent. And not being an English major, there may be a better way to say that, but that's the intent of the amendment. And I believe that's what we've done. We're not taking words out, we just reorganized them to make sure there was no ambiguity.
Senator Rothfuss for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. I did not understand the original intent. Now, with that explanation, it's clearer to me the restructuring, and it certainly doesn't lead to the concern I had. So with that, on and for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Other comments? Question being called for. All in favor of Senate File 11, second reading amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is passed. Senate File 11, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 29, second reading of the Senate file. Senate File 29, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 48, second reading of the Senate file. Oops.
Senate File 48, Education Suspension and Expulsion Model Policies.
Senate File 48, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. We're going to back up. I did Senate File 29. I skipped a piece out of it. I'm going to go back and get it on the record correctly, folks. Thank you. I'll start from the start. Senate File 29, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 29, Brucellosis Management Updates.
Senate File 29, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 49, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 49, Safe School and Climate Act Amendments.
Senate File 49, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 57, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 57, State-Held Drainage District Bonds.
Senate File 57, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 73, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 73, Lawful Fences.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that Senate File 73, lawful fences, be laid back for 1 day.
Without objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 73 has been laid back for 1 day. Senate Joint Resolution 1, second reading of the Senate Joint Resolution. Senator Salazar.
Senator Joint Resolution 1, amending Wyoming's Act of Admission for Leases and Earnings.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, during the Committee of the Whole, a question was raised with regard to what would be the actual additional earned income if this were to go through. After some research, it would be about 60 million in any given fiscal year. So I wanted to answer that question. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further comments? Senate Joint Resolution 1, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, actually, I request the Committee of Whole stand at ease to the sound of the gavel. Mr. President, just an explanation. The Senate has worked so diligently and so fast that we have to have the technology catch up with us. So if we could just give staff 10 minutes to get the Committee of the Whole posted up there, so if we could stand at ease to the sound of the
Works
gavel.
perfectly. Thanks for the information. Folks, you have 10 minutes. Stand at ease to the sound of the gavel. The reading clerk read standing committee reports, please.
January 12, 2023. Mr. Presidential Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Garou. Senator Schuler, Chairman. January 12, 2023, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 58, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Garou. Senator Schuler, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 18, Benefits for Spouses of Law Enforcement Members. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 19, Highway Safety Child Restraints. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader Hicks. We were
Mr.
at that-
President, I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole.
You have heard the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senator Pappas, please come take control.
Sherry, you have an extra pen? Oh, wait, I found it. I just found it. It was in my pocket.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Committee of the Whole will now come to order. Mike, probably need to get closer. How's that? Better? All right. Committee of the Whole will now come to order. The first bill for your consideration is Senate File 77. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 77, Public Works Apprenticeship Programs Repeal, an act relating to city, county, state, and local powers, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that I do so with a favorable motion of Senate File 77, and to explain this good piece of legislation for the first time, Senator Jones from the southwest part of the state.
Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, this bill is asking for a repeal of the Public Works Apprenticeship Programs. This bill referenced 16-6-901, which are the definitions, and 16-6902, which is for all public works awarded by the state, the University of Wyoming estimated to cost $1 million or more, a contractor who commits to ensure that not less than 10% of the labor hours shall be worked by apprentices, shall have his bid considered as if his bid were 1% lower than the actual dollar value of his bid. In the interim, testimony was given, and this program has never been utilized. There were no suggestions given to change the bill to encourage participation. Thank you for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any discussion on the bill? Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, and in terms of the suggestions that were received on the interim. I read an article this morning, and I hate to rely on what I read anymore, but it quoted a couple of union folks that said unions are not included as people that could help hustle up those apprentices. And they said traditionally that's where the apprentices, historically, you get a lot of apprentices out of union apprentice programs. And I wonder if during the interim, that kind of input was received or just didn't hear from the unions at all, and they're just now providing input now that we're at the 11th hour. I'm curious, because unions really could hustle up some apprentices. Curious, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to address the last question, it was an exceptional discussion during the interim, and it was one of our interim topics, and there was robust discussion, including unions, on ways that we can utilize the apprenticeship programs, the success of our apprenticeship programs, and a recognition that we're probably underutilizing them. It's just that this vehicle that was in statute currently existing was not achieving that utilization rate. The concern that was raised was, where can we advertise better? How can we do things better? And part of that conversation and what was raised in committee was we could try to use union halls and reference unions as places to source laborers for projects. So that's a different proposal that we can consider. It wasn't something that came up during the interim for us to draft towards it, but it's something that I think is part of the ongoing conversation. And it's honestly regrettable that this program wasn't used, because obviously we know that a big part of our development of skilled labor is the utilization of these apprenticeship programs, and we'd like to find ways to encourage it. The testimony we heard for why it wasn't used is just 10% is an awful lot of apprentices that would have to be on the job for a large project where you're trying to source from contractors and subcontractors. Nobody could achieve it. And then the contemplation of just lowering that rate made us recognize that the 1% differential just didn't make it worth the work. So we need to find other vehicles. One of those will be a further piece of legislation for consideration, Mr. Chairman. I hope that addresses the concerns.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Were union workers excluded from the program? I mean, could they have participated if they so chose to? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They were absolutely included. There was no exclusion, any apprenticeship. So these could be federal apprenticeships, these could be union apprenticeships. It was appropriately qualified in terms of being as inclusive as it could be and needed to be, just that the incentives weren't aligned with the costs. Thank you.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, and we had follow-up conversation too. They came back to the committee meeting, and to put it just simply, the program didn't gain traction. It's time to repeal it. Look for your support. Thank you.
Other questions? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Dockstader's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with favorable consideration on Senate file number, what are we on, 77, do pass. Please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The motion has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for your consideration is Senate file 78. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools, an act relating to education, labor, and employment, sponsored by the Minerals Committee. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I recommend that when the committee of the whole rises to report, do so with a favorable motion of Senate File 78. To explain the bill, Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, following up on the previous conversation, we needed to do something to address the shortcomings of the current system. And with that, the Minerals Committee during the interim brought Senate File 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools. In our testimony, Senate, one of the biggest problems that we found was not the availability of programs, it was understanding that those programs were out there and the ability of our students in schools, K-12 system in particular, to understand what was available, to have access to those programs, and to have the utilization of those programs fully facilitated by the school districts. So Senate File 78 addresses that shortcoming by providing communication or requiring communication between the Department of Workforce School Services and the school districts, and then requires that the school districts put together policies and procedures to actually allow and encourage their students to utilize the programs. So, Mr. Chairman, as we walk through the bill specifically, you see on page 2, we're in the Department of Workforce Services, and we add duties to the Director of the Department of Workforce Services under Romanet 7, the addition that they shall appoint a separate administrator for each of the divisions of the department, and then that individual shall, you can see, oh, I'm sorry, we're just amending the and sign there, onto the Romanet 9, provide information and guidance to the Board of Trustees in each school district regarding the availability of registered apprenticeship programs, student learner agreements, and on-the-job training available to students for pay, school credit, or both. And we have robust programs, and a lot of those have actually been developed or improved in recent years by the Minerals Committee. It's just that they're not reaching the students. So we're trying to ensure now that that communication stream is open and that students are aware of what opportunities they have and are capable of utilizing them. And you see that those shall include paragraph A, the rights and responsibilities of school districts, employers, learners, students, etc., with regard to these programs under state and federal law. And in the B paragraph on page 3, available local, state, and federal financial assistance for placement of students in these types of programs. The E paragraph on page 3, referring back to the Department of Workforce Services, requires reporting back to both the Minerals Committee and the Education Committee on their implementation of this program, as well as the implementation you can see in lines 11 through 16 by the school district. What have they actually done so that we can see whether this is working and providing students with more opportunities in these apprenticeship and career training programs. Bottom of page 3 onto page 4, the duties of the local boards of trustees. So these are the local school boards. Tax on a Romanet 40 on page 4. A requirement that when a school district receives this information from the Department of Workforce Services, they're required to provide it to their students within 60 days after this act goes into effect, and establish guidelines to implement the programs in each school district. And the B paragraph is important because this is something we heard that wasn't being done. While the programs exist, students were not having access to credit from these programs because school districts had not set those programs up, and it just kind of came down to, on some occasions, well, that's too hard, we don't know how to do that, we don't have programs in place, so we're sorry, we're not going to get you credit for that. So this B paragraph basically says figure out how to give students credit when they should be getting credit for these work training programs, whether it's an apprenticeship or another work training program. And the C indicates annually give to each high school student in the district information regarding these work training programs, apprenticeship, student learner programs, and on-the-job training. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 78. Ask the body's favorable consideration.
Excuse me, it needs to be read in,
Has it
please.
not been read in? Let's read that in.
It has not been read in. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Senate File 78, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 4 after line 17, insert.
Now that it's been read in, I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 78. Ask the body's favorable consideration. And with that, I'll explain that this is inserted at this point in the bill. It's a D paragraph ensuring that those local school boards provide information as requested by the Department of Workforce Services to ensure compliance with their reporting requirements. So just directing the local school boards to communicate with the Department of Workforce Services on their implementation of the program. Section 2 allows Workforce Services to promulgate rules. Section 3 provides that the information and training shall be provided to each school board of trustees by the Workforce Services in each school year moving forward. And I see that says 22, 23. Let's amend that next reading. That's not going to work. And then section 4 is the effective date of July 1st, 2023, and a requirement that sections 2, 3, and 4 are active beforehand to provide the rulemaking authority. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for the body's favorable consideration on the standing committee amendment, or would be happy to answer any questions on it. If not, let's dispatch of that and get to the bill.
Any questions on the standing committee amendment? Question being called for. All those in favor of the motion to adopt the standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 78, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 78 has been adopted. We're back
Thank
on
you,
the
Mr.
bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge the body's favorable consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, let me start by just expressing a general concern that we have to be careful adding new requirements on school districts. They need to be really related to the education the kids are receiving. I think this one probably meets that test because it is related to the career and technical training, particularly at the high school level. But I think that's something we need to question every time somebody wants schools to do something new and different. We can put on too many requirements and not get the basic jobs done. Mr. Chairman, I have a specific question. Page 4, lines 10 through 12. We're telling the school districts take all necessary steps to provide school credit to students who complete student training and employment programs offered in the district. So what's the definition of these programs? Is it any program that anybody comes up with anywhere in the district? What kind of controls are they to make sure that it's a program worthy of getting credit? I have a concern here as to how far we're opening it up. Is there some restriction on which programs are eligible?
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just wondering if this would be something like the CRT program, which is a work program that we've participated in several times in the past, where we have a high school student that wants to learn about a particular career. They come and they work with us, and so there might be some. Would the guidelines be similar to that? Would it be a heavy lift? Are we standing up a whole new program to where it would be a heavy lift for the school districts? So that would be my question.
Do we have someone to answer those? Oh, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the goal of this, and I will admit I didn't work on this bill in the interim, but we recognize that local control will play a huge factor in how schools set this up. And so what we're really trying to do is make sure that we're aware of what school districts are doing to implement programs that make sense for their communities and their students. So there's nothing binding in here. And I think that by the addition of us adding that paragraph D to provide some information back to us, I was just visiting with another legislator in this room yesterday about programs offered in their particular school districts. And I think that's something that's missing, is that school district coordination and information sharing. And so certainly if we're able to compile that information, see what's available there. But when we have those words, all steps necessary, there's nothing binding about this. I think that was my biggest concern, that school districts would have these requirements and not do anything. So I think that the language is appropriate, and hopefully this is a really good learning exercise for districts to be able to share information about what programs are working. At the end of the day, this is one area where we've expressed concern. We provide tons of pathways, particularly through our Hathaway scholarships, for students that are on a four-year college track. And this body has been really responsive to the fact that that's not right for every student. We need to be doing a better job of providing more career and technical training, and that's what this is geared toward. So to the extent that a school district looks at those mentorship opportunities and can see the value, maybe providing some credit hours if certain hours are met and certain other criteria were met, That's what that's intended to do, is encourage those students to get hands-on training from people in their community who are experts in this. In your joint education hearing or committee, we worked extensively on CTE issues, and there is a shortage of CTE teachers in Wyoming. We'll hear about that later on in the session. But to me, this is a huge way of helping to bridge that gap, get those kids that have that interest trained in the skills that they want to work in. So I'd encourage your adoption of the bill.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, on and for the bill, we've heard a lot of testimony in the interim about this, and we worked hard on making sure the schools were on board with the thing so that they would adopt it also. They needed a platform to work with. As I understood it, they could do the credits for the students, but that had to be approved through the education system, not through the legislature, or they couldn't just give them credits. So I think this program is going to be helpful. We have a lot of students that want to do this, but there's no mechanism for them to get their classes. So we were trying to push that through. Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, in sympathy with where I think this bill is trying to go, but I have some real reservations about what we're seeing here. These are the list of things a school district shall do. And one of them is take all necessary steps to provide school credit to students who complete student training and employment programs offered in the district. What does that mean? If I'm running a fast food operation, does it mean that I can get school credit for all my high school kids that are coming and working if I'm saying it's a training program? Is that? And frankly, I think the fast food people do a pretty good job in training students in some very important skills, how you deal with customers, all the things that you do. Is that here? Let me give you a different kind of example, Mr. Chairman. Suppose I need a couple more flood irrigators. Want to hire a couple of high school students. Can I call that a training program under this? Get them school credit, get them to come away from school during school hours, and do some work on the ranch in April and May when we really need some people. What ability is there in here for the school district to reject any particular training program as not being a real training program, as not being something that is going to be really valuable to the students? Mr. Chairman, I think I'm in sympathy with where this bill's going, but I'm not sure this one is quite ready for prime time yet.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate the discussion of these concerns, but a couple of things. First of all, if we read in context, it's pretty clear that the language is structured to provide the opportunity for local districts to develop what their standards and criteria are. I'll get to that in one moment. The second point, though, which I think is important, is we have, as I mentioned, extensive programs available, probably in every school district in the state, where this is being done, and there's established structures for on-the-job training. There are certified apprenticeships throughout the state. It's ensuring that the conduit for the school district is in place and that they've established the criteria. So rather than just reading the first half of the sentence on paragraph B, it's important to take it in the context of the paragraph A on page 4 as well, which is that the school district, or excuse me, Yep, the school district shall establish guidelines to implement student training and employment programs in schools in the district. So that means that each school district will determine what is and isn't going to qualify as an employment program, what they'll accept, right? So that would be step one, is determine whether the flood irrigator program on the Good Senator from Bates Creek is a work-study program or is not. Set those standards beforehand. And then obviously also determine which would be credit-bearing, which wouldn't be credit-bearing, how many credits they would come with. This is standard practice. All districts are familiar with what it takes to get credit, what standards have to be met, what educational outcomes and learning outcomes are going to be required to achieve credit. This does not change any of that and would not venture to change any of that. I think it would be dangerous to put that type of structure in a bill of this sort because it's common practice that every school district already knows how to do if they're willing to take it on. The B paragraph then references back to the A paragraph, Mr. Chairman, that these districts shall take all necessary steps to provide school credit to students who complete student training and employment programs offered in the district, which again were qualified and categorized in the A paragraph. So it's certainly not a statement that every work program or any work that a student does is going to receive high school credit. It doesn't imply that in any way. The language was carefully crafted to ensure that the school district has the authority over which programs they'll be rewarding credit, what the requirements would be. But again, I'll reiterate that these are programs that are already in place and well established throughout the state, and some districts are doing them, but not all districts. Not all districts know about all of them. So the key here is to facilitate that knowledge and communication, Mr. Chairman, and to ensure that all of the school districts are working to provide as many opportunities for students as possible. And Mr. Chairman, I'd urge the body's favorable consideration. I think we took special care in balancing certainly that local control to determine what's best for that school district with requirements that all school districts are providing sufficient information to their students to enrich their educational experience.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think another just check on that is paragraph C. There's no requirement that a program has to ensure that a certain number of students have to be part of these apprenticeships. Student C says the only requirement is that they annually give to each high school student in the district information on apprenticeships, student learner agreements, and on-the-job training opportunities. So the check here, Mr. Chairman, isn't that we're just farming out students for free labor for, pet projects in certain communities. Students have to be attracted to it. And so I think that that's probably the most important check of all. The school district needs to make the students aware of why this program is valuable. And I think we can trust students to make those decisions. So I think that's just another thing. Thank you. Urge your aye vote.
Okay. Further discussion. Are we ready for the question? Question being called for. All those in favor of Senator Dockstadter's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 78, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Senate File 78 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 58. Will really quick, please read the bill.
Senate File 58, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration, sponsored by the Travel Committee, an act relating to state lands. It was referred to committee number 6, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused Senator Garreau. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 58 do pass. And with that, I would ask Senator Ellis to read the bill.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good little bill that the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee worked on in the interim. And we just heard it this morning, so I thought I might have more time to have printed maps for everyone to explain where this parcel is, but I don't. If you look in your email, though, I just sent you that map a few minutes ago. But essentially, there's a 46.382 acre parcel located just northeast of Guernsey State Park. And years ago, an individual who, with the last name of Sutton, donated this parcel to the state of Wyoming for it to be preserved. It's located, and I feel like I did misspeak with folks. I had been showing folks some, sharing some dirt I have on my desk that is mineralized. It's a red ochrosite. It's really unique in North America. This is adjacent to that. But this site was given to Wyoming a number of years ago once this individual passed away. And so the State Parks and Cultural Resources Office did a site criteria analysis. Years ago, Wyoming adopted this criteria analysis because state parks started becoming this entity that would receive all these parcels and wasn't sure what they should do with them. You know, are they suitable for recreation or other historic and cultural purposes? So utilizing existing statute and regulation, they analyzed this area, and it is very unique. For those of you who are familiar with this area, this was a very historic area for a lot of Native American tribes. And so the State Parks Office started a site criterion process. They reached out to both of our tribes in Wyoming, as well as all the signatories of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868. And in doing so, they found that it had significant value, particularly archaeological features that indicate potential habitation, ceremonial and manufacturing uses, and some other things. So under that process, they recommended that this site be adopted into our system as a state archaeological site. So what does that mean? Well, not a whole lot really, other than because this area has been kind of thrown into the mix of the state park system, there's no fencing, there's no signage, and there's great concern for looting. Because Native people occupied this area, a lot more study is warranted. And so there are, teepee rings and that kind of stuff in this area. And so this would allow state parks to put up some appropriate signage, make sure that visitors to this area are aware that if they're taking things from this, they could be potentially looting. And so it would provide for that fencing as well as some cameras to monitor the site. So the fiscal note includes an appropriation, an amount of $194,306 as the anticipated expenditure. In visiting with state parks, they believe they can absorb this cost within their existing state park account through their CapCon and or capital construction budget. And so really, just wanted to add that we didn't get to visit the site during our interim work. A fellow colleague of mine from Converse County and I, though, did visit this site, and it is really spectacular. As I mentioned, right next to it is this red ochre mine, and in visiting that site, there are archaeologists working. That's a private mine, private land, but have opened it up to archaeological digs. And when we visited, there are archaeologists there that were covered in this red dirt, and they look like bronze statues. There's this mineralized dirt. It's really amazing. But in their work, they found fossils that contain this red dirt that kind of glisten, arrowheads. And so this area being so close by, this was a major hub for historic peoples. And so would really encourage your aye vote on this. This is a good thing for Wyoming, and we need to protect these resources.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any mineral resources underneath this area of any consequence? Can someone elaborate on that? What potential are we going to be neglecting in that area if this is designated under that criteria? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Can we have Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question, and I appreciate the explanation. I think that was good to help me understand this. I just wonder within state parks, when they've done an analysis of this, as to, what are the highest priorities to protect these archaeological, paleontological resources that may be out there? And the reason I ask that question is how does this rank against some of the other special archaeological sites around the state of Wyoming? And just because I was a previous appropriator in my other life, is this going to become kind of a status quo that every time we have a special site that we're going to be putting chain link fence around them with security cameras? And the reason I ask that is that eventually it could very costly. And then yet when I travel around the state and I see these same similar facilities, I don't see the federal government, which maybe we can do it better than the feds, and this may be an opportunity, typically don't go to the level of security that we're seeing for this site. So just a little bit of an explanation on that, please, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I'm the recently former senator for Platte County, I'll take a crack at some of those. To my good colleague from Sweetwater County, Mr. Chairman, there was historic iron ore development. There was a mine that shut down, I believe, in the early 80s. So the answer is no, there isn't really anything that's economically viable in the area. Platte County is well known for, I believe the representative from that county is called mineral deficient. And so having represented Converse and Platte County for the past 7 years, I can tell you that there's not much in terms of mining activity or interests that would be inhibited by this designation. And my colleague from Laramie County did a very good job of describing the importance of this site. But I mean, it is a very unique site. To my colleague from Baggs, that it's, I could stand corrected, but I believe it has evidence of some of the earliest human activity in North America. Going back around 12,000 years. So rather significant, I would say. It's not just any old site. And I think something that's, this bill would be good, not just for Wyoming, it would be good for Platte County and be good for, it's another thing that we can really hang our hat on as one of those earlier sites of human activity in North America.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, if you look at the map that I provided you online, it is landlocked. There are agreements for access to it, so it is very uniquely protected. And I just wanted to add that this is unique. Wyoming doesn't just go out and designate archaeological sites. This was actually bequeathed to the state of Wyoming. So we have an obligation to do something with it. In looking at the site criterion process, which included landowner involvement, one of our colleagues from down the hall participated on that site criterion process and supported this throughout the interim. So this is unique. I don't think you're going to see state archaeologists driving around Wyoming and us just identifying sites. To that end, if you look at the bill, this adds Romanet 3. There are only 2 other sites, and if you wanted to look up the statute to see the other 2, you could do that. So this is unique, and I don't think you're going to see these pop up too often.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, how soon can you get the fence up? Because now everyone knows what this is. And I hope we move very quickly on this. So I'd like to know how long it would take for this to be erected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ellis. Oh, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think anybody asked that question, but I think they want to get it done as soon as possible. And so they already have the fees within their own budgetary system to go ahead and do that, to get the fence erected, and also to have some cameras up there, because there was a problem with looting in the past, and I think it may have been a hangout for some of the younger kids to go party. And so we want to get it done as quickly as we can, because it is a major archaeological site. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone rising. Are we ready for the question? Question being called for. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 58, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File 58 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I have privilege of the floor?
Please do.
Thank you. Colleagues, we're not allowed to use props when we explain bills for the new members. You can't have big poster boards like they do in Congress. But I have had some questions. I visited the site a number of years ago with Senator Boner, visited with our state archaeologist, and this dirt is so extraordinary. I asked if I could have a bag of the dirt, and he said yes. So to anyone who's concerned that I was out there looting myself, I wasn't. I had permission to obtain this jar of dirt. But I welcome any of you who I haven't had a chance to visit with. Feel free to open this up and just kind of rub some of this on your dirt. It's a really highly mineralized dirt, and it makes your skin glow. It's really actually lovely. I thought about using it as makeup. So feel free to do that, and just to, again, clarify, these are not human remains. I did not loot, but have fun with my jar.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Okay, so the next bill for our consideration is Senate File 59. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority, sponsored by the Travel Commission, an act relating to state lands. Was referred to Committee Number 6, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused Senator Garreau. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 59 do pass. And for an explanation of the bill, I took this one on because it's a really short and sweet bill, and so it's a good one to start with. I bring you Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority. This was a bill that was brought to us last year. Actually, the history behind this is that state parks, as viewership and increased usage of all of our parks, has come to the legislature a number of times to try to change the way that their percentages are set up in terms of maintenance and capital. And so bottom line, I guess in 2015, they were granted the potential to use 25% for maintenance. And then 2017, 30%, 2021, 60%. So really, all this bill does is it eliminates the sunset so that we don't have to keep coming back every 2 years and asking if it's okay if the state parks uses that 60% for maintenance. And just to give you a little example of just Guernsey State Park alone, after COVID, the amount of folks that came through Guernsey, it was amazing. And we actually got up to around 5.8 million visitors through Wyoming. Guernsey State Park alone became the third largest city, and all they had were 2 law enforcement people to take care of 7 campgrounds and about 6,000 acres. And it really taxed our law enforcement people. So by the foresight of the legislature to bump that up to 60% so that we could use maintenance and operational costs, that really helped our state parks. It probably helped them to be able to not have to close down a park or 2. And so really, just to kind of emphasize that the folks there have been very, very, very fiscally conservative with their money. They've never used the 60%. They've used about 50%, but usually what they've used it for, instead of just maintenance, they've been able to hire more people to help collect fees. They've been able to hire some greeters, more park rangers, and most importantly, law enforcement. And that's really the biggest thing there is that, and they cannot use this for full-time people, but they can use it only for seasonals. So really, that's all this is. We're asking you to eliminate the sunset, and that's about it. So I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Questions? Are you ready for the question? Okay, question being called for. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 59, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Senate File 59 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 18. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 18, Benefits for Spouses of Law Enforcement Members, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to the administration of government. Was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe that we will have to re-refer this bill to appropriations since there is a fiscal impact. It's my understanding, if I remember correctly, that we can't do that in committee of the whole. So I'll just go ahead and ask that this be laid back, and we'll get it re-referred when we get back as the Senate.
Okay, we will do that. So the next bill for your consideration is Senate File 19. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 19, Highway Safety Child Restraints, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to motor vehicles. Was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman.
Heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Boner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 19. And to explain this good little bill, I refer to my colleague from
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is on highway safety child restraints, and what it does is it brings our laws in
line with the guidelines that are recommended by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Currently, a child needs to be in a rear-facing child seat up until the age of 1. This would change it so that if you look on lines 14 through 17, the child safety restraint system required by this subsection shall be rear-facing until the child reaches either the age of 2 or the weight or height limit specified by the manufacturer of the child safety restraint system. So I'll take questions.
Okay, do we have any questions on the bill? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Senator Office. Go, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the sponsors. The new language on 14 through 18 makes sense, but I'm trying to read it in the context of the first part, which says that they have to be in a seat until their 9th birthday, and they almost seem to conflict with each other. But maybe I'm misreading a nuance there. Wouldn't the top half require them to utilize a seat longer potentially than the weight requirement of these units under some circumstances?
Senator Brennan, will you be answering that?
I believe I have the answer to that, and Senator Boner can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what this does is that we require that the child be in a car seat up till the 9th birthday, but the other is just explaining that they need to be in a rear-facing seat until their 2nd birthday, or they have met the weight and height requirements to get out of the rear-facing seat.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, that 9-year-old requirement is also dealing with whether or not they're in the front seat or not. So that's the distinction there, front seat versus back seat.
Any further questions? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 19, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Senate File 19 has passed the committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're going to take an early lunch here. Get caught on general thought. Microphone, please.
Oh, excuse me. There you go.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion is passed. Mr. President, I relinquish the desk. Thanks.
Could the reader read in the standing committee reports?
January 12, 2023. Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Garreau. Senator Schuler, Chairman. January 12, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 58, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration, respectively reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Garreau. Senator Schuler, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 18, Benefits for Spouses of Law Enforcement Members, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 19, Highway Safety, Child Restraints, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman. January 12, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 2, Wyoming Telecommunications Act Sunset Date, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Landon, and Scott. No, Senator Case. Senator Case, Chairman. January 12, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 5, Medical Malpractice Statutory Update, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. January 11, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 20, Driver's License and ID Card Photo Quality, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, members, we had another member that gave a first presentation of the bill today, and that was Senator Brennan. So I think we ought to congratulate her for her fine job with the bill presentation.
Congratulations, Senator Brennan. We have one more report to read in, please.
January 12, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 60, Non-Resident Hunting License Application Fees, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Guru. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senate File 18, Benefits for Spouses of Law Enforcement Members, has a fiscal impact. I ask that be re-referred to Committee number 2 Appropriations at this time.
Are any objections? So ordered. Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President,
Yes.
I request that the Senate stand in recess until the sound of the gavel.
Are there any announcements? I'm trying to find you. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet, probably in about a half hour to give our committee members time to wolf down some lunch. We'll meet down in W6 to take up the following bills: Senate File 63, Tax Administration Revisions, and Senate File 42, Taxation of Cigars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, will meet Friday, tomorrow, January 13th, upon adjournment in Capitol Center Room W2 and online. Consider Senate File 14, Wyoming National Guard Professional Malpractice Liability, Senate File 15, Military Leave for State Employees, and Senate File 53, Wyoming National Guard Medical Insurance Premiums.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, your Appropriations Committee, Senate Appropriations Committee, will meet today upon noon recess in State Capitol Room E301 with the House Committee. The committee will receive information regarding employee compensation, and we will continue with CapCon from this morning. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Your Committee 1 Judiciary, a reminder to the committee members, we will meet at 7:30 in the morning, Mr. President, in the historic Supreme Court chamber for an informational gathering specifically related to the drug fentanyl, but other concerns that will be shared by the Department of Criminal Investigation. So you are welcome to sit in with the Judiciary Committee if you so desire. Again, 7:30. And then at 8:30, we will have a Judiciary Committee meeting. We will take up the following bills. Senate File 32, prohibiting drones over penal institutions. Senate File 34, trespass by small unmanned aircraft. And Senate File 25, district and prosecuting attorneys, bar license requirement as time permits. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Senate Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee will meet today, Thursday, January 12th, 15 minutes after adjournment in Capitol Extension Room 2 and online to consider the following bills. Senate File 74, slow-moving vehicle amendments. Senate File 30, apiculture, agricultural land use and purpose. Senate File 68, prescriptive easement for water conveyances. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, likely the healthiest committee in the Senate, will meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're going to discuss 3 bills. Senate File 7, definition of opioid antagonist amendment, which you will need to talk about that after you go to the fentanyl presentation. Senate File 9, Medicaid coverage licensed pharmacist. And Senate File 37, podiatry medical services Medicaid.
Sounds like an exciting day in labor health. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President, excuse me. So I just want to clarify, the motion before the body was to stand at ease to the sound of the gavel, and I just want to understand if we expect to come back in before a noon recess, or is there something I'm not aware of in the good majority leader's mind? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move the Committee of the Whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
Nope.
Nope.
Recess for lunch. Recess, not adjourn.
This is the
Senator Ellis.
Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind folks, you should have received an invitation from the Integrated Test Center. They'll be providing lunch in the Capitol Extension today, or maybe room W053, wherever we hang out. So just a reminder.
Senator Rothfuss.
Quick point of order. We'll need to withdraw the first motion before making the second motion.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Well, Mr. President, that will now be 3 motions. Because the original motion was when we were in the Committee of the Whole.
Okay.
And then there was a subsequent motion to that. And now there's a third motion on the floor.
Let's withdraw and start over. You can make your
All
withdrawal.
right.
Retreat.
Mr. President, we're going to lunch. And according to the directions I have that I was supplied for our chief clerk, it says at lunch recess, it says, Mr. President, I move the Committee of the Whole beg leave and rise and set again for lunch breaks. So maybe we have to convene a Rules Committee meeting to make a determination of this, and the rest of you can eat. But Mr. Chairman, that's a script that I have.
Okay, let's go to number 18 on the script. Senator Scott first. Point of order. Senator Case.
So, Mr. President, the point of order is we are not the Committee of the Whole. So we're not asking for the Committee of the Whole to beg leave and rise. We're the Senate right now. It's a very confusing sometimes to people, but it means something. The Committee of the Whole is just a committee chaired by one of our fellow members. And to take action on this motion, we are here as the Senate. So the motion has to relate to what the Senate will do and when the Senate comes back.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I move that we stand in recess until 2 p.m.
We will reconvene at 2 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. What? All in favor? Those opposed? We'll reconvene at 2.